So I've run a lot of surveys on this channel regarding whether you guys use debit cards, credit cards, or even cash for your most common purchases. And what the results are showing is that you guys typically use your debit cards for purchases, and that's why I'm making this video for you today. So in this video, I'm going to explain why I never use debit cards to make purchases unless I absolutely have to, and why I typically use credit cards for all of my purchases just because it makes more sense. But don't worry if you do use debit cards, because I'm not going to totally diss on them, because there are actually pros and cons when it comes to credit cards and debit cards. But for the most part, it just makes more sense to use a credit card if you're not paying any credit card interest. Now, if you just found this channel, I'm Jason with Honest Finance, and I make a lot of videos on different topics that'll give your life and your finances more value. So if you guys are interested in that type of content, feel free in subscribing. Or you can just continue on with your life and just watch this one particular video on why I don't use debit cards. So let's get right into it. Okay, so I'll start off talking about the good things about debit cards, and then I'll move into the negative stuff so that you can see with a little more clarity why I prefer to use credit cards for all of my purchases. Now, one of the best reasons for using a debit card is because it's linked directly to your checking account. So what this means is that every single time you make a transaction with your debit card, it's going to show up instantly on your statement balance so that you know exactly what's going on inside your checking account right when you actually make a purchase. And then another cool thing about debit cards is if you ever need cash back, then I would definitely use a debit card, because you can do this at grocery stores, gas stations, all over the place, and you can always get cash back, and it's super easy to just take it out, get cash right from your checking account. Now, on the flip side, credit card transactions do post on their account the same day, but they're never going to be fully posted for about 3 days while they pend. And so sometimes that can get a little bit confusing. And then if you ever do need cash back from a credit card, I would never do that, because it's called a cash advance, and you're actually going to be charged interest every single day you use it, which is something that I would not recommend doing. And then keep in mind, whenever you're using a debit card, the transactions are actually being deducted from your account, which makes a lot more sense from a budgeting point of view, because when you're using a credit card, the transactions actually go up on your balance, and it can confuse people a lot because you're not seeing it in a direct reflected sense like you do from your debit card and your checking account. And seriously, if you do carry a credit card balance where you're paying interest every month, then disregard everything I'm about to say, because in that context, I still want you to use your debit card for everything, because it is not worth taking any of this advice if you're paying interest on your credit card. Now, the way that you can tell if you're paying interest on your credit card is just check your statement balance and see if you have any line items that say that you've paid any interest charges. Because if you have, then that means you are paying interest on it. Now, the other way you can tell is if you just know for yourself that you don't pay off your statement balance in full. And I know this can get a little bit confusing, so I am going to link up a couple videos up here on credit cards so you can learn more about it if you want to. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you are paying any interest on your credit card, then disregard what I'm about to say. Now, these are the reasons why I prefer to use credit cards for all of my purchases versus debit cards, and this is why it's going to make sense for you guys. Now, the first reason why I use credit cards for all of my purchases is because they are way more protected than debit card purchases. So if you ever need to reverse a charge, it's a lot easier to do that with a credit card than with a debit card. So for example, a few years back, I was staying in New York City at a hotel, and the problem is that the hotel actually charged me for 2 rooms when I only needed 1 room. And so when I actually disputed the charges with them, they refused to settle it with me. So all I did was I just called up Visa, who was the credit card that I used at the hotel, and then they helped me get the charges reversed so that I didn't have to pay for a room that I didn't book. Now, I'm not saying that debit cards won't help you in those types of situations, but the thing is that with a credit card, it's always in their best interest to keep you as their customer, and they're always going to do as much as they possibly can to help you, whereas with a debit card, you just don't have as much protection. Credit cards also give you extended warranties on your purchases, and they also protect your purchases against theft and damage, which is something that debit cards never do. They also have all the reward points and sign-up bonuses too, so if you're going to be spending money anyway, then you might as well just get the reward points that you do with a credit card. Now, I have seen a lot of debit cards that actually do have rewards programs, but you have to look for them and do a little bit of research to find them, but they do exist out there. It's just a lot easier to find them with credit cards because it seems like every single credit card out there has a rewards program. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to have to pay your utility bill regardless, then you might as well just get reward points for using your credit card because you're going to have to pay it anyways. And then if you travel internationally, credit cards are actually very useful to use because a lot of them aren't going to charge you foreign transaction fees. And what this means is that if you're buying stuff outside the country, then they're not going to charge you to convert the currency whenever you make a transaction, and that is very convenient. And if you guys are still watching this video, can you please just give it a thumbs up so that I can tell how many people are liking it versus not liking it, and then I know if I'm gonna make more content like this. Thank you very much. And another thing to keep in mind with credit cards is that their websites are extremely robust. So if you're into budgeting and stuff like that, then credit cards are very, very good because they obviously have a lot of money to fund their websites, and they make them extremely intuitive to figure out your budget and where your spending is and all that kind of stuff. Whereas with a lot of debit cards, if you're using a local bank or a small little credit union, you're never gonna have that type of a website, and they're never gonna be as good as what you get from credit cards. And then the last thing on credit cards is that they actually carry an important role in your credit score, which is something that debit cards definitely don't do. But I wish it wasn't true, but it is, and it's just the fact that you do need a credit card in order to help your credit score out in some sense. Because basically your credit cards control about 30% of your credit score through what's called credit utilization, and this all just has to do with how much you're spending versus what your limits are, and this can get a little bit techie. So if you guys want to learn more about your utilization score, I'll leave a video up here, but the point is that credit cards do help your credit score and debit cards don't. And just remember that credit cards don't charge you a penny in interest unless you're not paying your statement balance off in full. So as long as you're paying off that statement balance, you're never gonna have to pay a penny in interest, and you don't have to be afraid of credit cards. But if you feel like you're the type of person that's not going to be able to control your spending through a credit card, then definitely just stick with what works. I just want what's best for you guys. And in my context, I like to use credit cards because they're better than debit cards in some ways. But if you're not going to be able to control your spending and you're going to be spending money on interest, then definitely just stick with a debit card. Now, once again, I'm Jason with Honest Finance, and I make a lot of videos on different topics that'll give your life and your finances more value. So definitely subscribe if you guys are into that type of content. But for now, if you guys just want to watch some more credit card videos, I'll link them up here. And that's all for now.